All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Do a roll call.
Cheryl Robinson.
Here.
Dave Rowley.
Here.
Jeff Lord.
Here.
Tom Romeo.
Here.
Craig Gelsman is absent. Patricia Kennedy.
Here.
Andrew Marietta is absent. We have a quorum.
All right, and as I forego the chair's remarks, we'll move right into the approval of the meeting minutes from August 22nd for the board and September 12th for the finance and project committee meetings. Any questions or comments or changes needed? Not, I would take a motion.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, today we have some guests that are going to present a bit on the housing plan that was studied in the county. And I know there was some interest here from the board in understanding kind of the outcomes of that and how that might impact anything that we have for a vision or a strategy. You're late to the game, Craig. So I'll turn it over to Tammy.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, I'm Tammy Harris, I'm the County Planning Director. I also have with me Trevor Fuller, he's the Assistant Director of Planning for the county, and Bridget Stith, who's the Executive Director of COIDA Rural Housing Assistance, or they also go by ORHA. So Bridget is here with us because she's been a critical partner with us, and ORHA has been a partner with the County Planning Department, I think for decades at this point, and working together on housing projects. So sometime last year, after hearing a lot of anecdotal information about the housing situation in the county, as well as reading about national trends, we went to our parent committee, which is the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, and asked for their blessing to allow us to just dig in a little deeper in the data and see what that tells us about the situation in Otsego County. So we did put together a document that is on the planning department webpage. If you go to OtsiegoCountyNY.gov, go to planning, under plans, you'll see the housing update. You'll also see that there were previous housing studies done. I think the first one might have been in the early 2000s. There was an update in 2018, 2019. And since the pandemic, we felt it was time to just give it another look and see if anything had changed in the last few years. And I think you'll see that it has, but, and as with many of our plans, how relevant are these plans after everything has changed so much in the last few years? So what we're going to show you today is something we've been working on to accompany our plan.
I think you can.
We've recently kind of upgraded our mapping and GIS capabilities in the county, and part of that software includes something called story maps, and it's a way of displaying information in an interactive way that is a little more accessible for a lot of the public. Instead of reading through a 20 to 50 page document, it brings them through the narrative of that document in a way it's a little bit more interactive. So what we're going to see today is that work in progress. So obviously we're always welcome to feedback on that and kind of see what we're working on. Once that is finished up, we will have that link publicly available, so anybody from the public can go and see a more interactive view of the housing situation in the county. And it works on mobile and tablet as well, which just increases the accessibility piece of that. But I am going to share that to the screen. And I'm going to turn it over to Trevor Fuller, who has been the one behind putting this onto the story map format. Would you like to control the computer, Trevor, or would you like me to?
You can go ahead. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. Thanks. So yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. Jody and Meg, good to be here. So yeah, like Tammy said, the story maps are just a really nice kind of visual communication form, I think. And I've been using it for years as part of the GIS work that I've been doing. But it's a good format, kind of let the maps showing the different statistics and demographic information, let the maps really kind of do the communicating without an overwhelming amount of text that you might see on PowerPoint. So yeah, if we can kind of scroll down here and get started, just a little intro in terms of how the county fares relative to the rest of the state in terms of population change. As you all know, I'm sure we've experienced some population decline. And you can see us kind of smack dab in the middle there, with some about 6% overall. That's not relative to this this map. This was for just 1 year, but between 2010 and 2020, we saw just under 6% decline in population. So what we're doing here then is we wanted to, first of all, in taking inventory of housing needs or assessing housing needs, we really wanted to first get a good sense of demographically, where do we stand? How have we changed demographically, in particular from 2010 to 2020, but then some more recent information that the Census Bureau has released that tells us a little bit about the post-COVID kind of changes. And so we looked at the human population, right? Demographically, how are we changing? But then also the housing stock. And so we'll get into both of those in a little more detail and show you some maps that really seem to delineate where this change is occurring most within the county. And with the overall kind of sense here being the population trend, the housing stock trends, how do these collectively inform efforts in the future to address housing needs? And so, first of all, the population decline I mentioned, just to see the raw numbers there, 61,000 and change. And so this was pretty clear cut, the population loss. We are not alone, of course, as you know. That trend is visible throughout New York State, but in many other states as well. That's a trend. So the population pyramid gets into a little bit more detail in terms of gender in the population, age groups, and how they're changing. So the population pyramid that we have is inverted in one sense, in that older age group, a few older age groups there under the 75 to 79 years old on the left side. Yeah, thank you. Those are a little bit larger. Typically, you'd want to see the base of that pyramid, actually look like a pyramid and be wider at the base, so you have a growing young population. We have the college influence there, with really, it's 15 to 19, and then 19 to 24 years are the brackets that they break off. But you can see that's just simply reflecting the two colleges and their influx. Otherwise, we're quite an inverted pyramid. So that means we are aging in place. We are getting older as a county, and the population in the county is, the older population is becoming a larger portion of the overall population. Some interesting stats here just to show from 2010 to 2020, the median age. So block group, if you're familiar with block groups, the Census Bureau has multiple scales at which they give us data. Blocks are quite small, they're block groups, census tracts, zip code, all that county. And so there are multiple scales. In this, we tried to use block group because that gets us down to a reasonable scale where we can see variety and difference across space. A lot of data is not available at the block level, which is quite small. So this captures in 2010 where the median age was highest, and you can see the northern part of the county there, Cooperstown, Middlefield, and up. And so from 2010 then to 2020, we can see it changes pretty drastically, at least on a visual scale. The age ranges are the same there, so we can compare those well. But in 2020, then you can see there's really an extensive, amount more of an area that has an older population. as the median, increasing that median age. And so these demographics really, we're trying to build this picture so that we can then, that can inform the type of housing, the type of economic development, potentially that we can be looking towards in the future based on these demographics. So moving from that median age, we then have just population over 65 years of age. And so this shows you a distribution there. We've got a little more spread out, but certainly the central part of the county with the older population there. And again, that simply informs our overall efforts going forward of where housing may be needed and what kind of housing, what types of community development may be most appropriate. So then moving from population, we can look at something else that is related is the population reporting disabilities. And it's an interesting statistic. The Census Bureau captures just about everything imaginable. But this is really relevant, again, when you're talking about what kinds of housing may be needed and how we develop a community, who it may serve, being sure to include population groups that have particular needs. So this is a telling display as well, and something to keep in mind going forward. And within this is at the town or the census tract level. So they don't exactly conform to the towns, they mostly do, but then you have block groups at a finer scale, and that's where we see some of the difference amongst individual villages. With, as you see, Portlandville, 35% of the population reporting disabilities, Mount Vision, 26%, and then a few with 25%. So now those disabilities can be a really wide range, but amongst those are things like ambulatory difficulty and things that would speak to being able to provide housing so that people can be closer to various services, public transportation, different needs. So yeah.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Would Burlington and Milford be skewed somewhat by Springbrook and Pathfinder Village?
That's an excellent question. I think it would be, yeah, and so that's definitely part of that story, and I think there are a few of these kinds of data points where we see the influence of local either housing like that and services or particular commercial facilities, the baseball parks in the area when we look at short-term rentals, some of the effects they can have. So yeah, thank you, excellent point. And yeah, please feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions about these maps or any point you'd like to make. Just feel free to jump on in. So this next one, commute time, an interesting stat for this, because you can see there is a significant portion of some areas where people are driving 30 to 35 minutes, getting upwards 26 to 38% of the population, the working population, with a decent commute. So that's something to keep in mind relative to where these folks are working. That would obviously be the next thing to kind of dig into, just how far are people going? Are they going out of the county from Richfield up to the Utica area, Worcester over to, the Albany, Cobleskill even to Albany, those areas. So yeah, an interesting stat here. That's where the higher numbers.
We all embrace the fact that in a rural community, we all drive a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's another thing in terms of, right, and I think what that speaks to is that the real kind of centers of those jobs are in your urbanized spaces. So Oneonta, the village, Cooperstown to an extent, but really Oneonta and beyond. And that you're going to see that anywhere in rural communities.
Just upstate New York, that's how we get it.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of places like that as well. So So yeah, that's just an interesting tidbit. It would be definitely something anecdotally at this point, but you'd want to still get a sense of exactly, you know, where do people work in the county, just how far are they driving, and speak to perhaps economic development efforts in the future. But yeah, just another kind of side demographic to understand the population a little bit. Median household income, just wanted to share. So the median for the county is 65 and change. And then the four municipalities there listed are among the lowest in the county. And simply just for perspective here to see where the population lies in these income brackets can inform also where potentially, can't read into this too deeply, but potentially where there may be additional need for housing. All right, go ahead. So then the housing stock itself, right? We've got the population, but then what's actually happening with the houses. And much like the population, the number of housing units has declined overall from 20 to 22, or 10 to 20, I'm sorry. And then the actual housing units themselves are aging in place. So we have an aging and declining housing stock that is really speaking to the core of this project. And so you can see just raw numbers, the difference here from 10 to 20 with the yellow areas experiencing some growth over that time span. There has been in the last couple of years an overall 1% increase in the county of housing stock. That's overall. Clearly, spatially, there are differences throughout the county, and so that's what we really want to dig down to, is the scale at which we can decipher those differences when it comes time to working with communities as a planning department, or HA's work as well, being able to understand where those declines have occurred and why will become important moving forward. This puts a finer scale into just tabular form, because on a map, these villages, you know, kind of small area, it's kind of not worth it to visually try to display that. But you can see some of the difference, a handful that have experienced some positive growth within their municipality. Some other villages, municipalities, CDP is a census designated place. But some other locations where you're seeing a pretty significant change from 10 to 20. So part of what I thought would be interesting to look at, we saw from 10 to 20 what happened to housing. The US Census Bureau also has some surveys that they do that are not your primary decennial census. So they are to be taken with a grain of salt. There is a margin of error that is significant in a lot of these survey estimates, but they put it out there, and especially with respect to housing, that's simply how to get a lot of this data without waiting for another decennial census. So you can see the change in housing units just from 19 to 22. More loss along the northern reaches, but fairly kind of dispersed otherwise. A handful where there was some positive change, so that's promising. So an interesting pattern there, a little bit different than just looking from 10 to 20. There are some positive areas here.
How do you define a housing unit? In other words, when you go from 600 to 550, what happened to those 50 housing units that are no longer there?
Yeah, what happens usually is they are basically removed from the kind of standard homeownership market, as I understand it. Would you want to?
When a housing unit's stops counting as a housing unit by the census. They're a little opaque about what exactly it means, but essentially, the census no longer considers it something anyone would use for housing. So that would be an uninhabitable house, something that was demolished, something that is like, a shell of a former fire.
So a seasonal unit that's rented for only 12 or 13 weeks would still show up as a housing unit?
Yes,
Okay.
and then it would show up in the vacancy statistics or the seasonal use statistics.
Yeah, they capture that data,
Right.
amazing scale, so they can see what is available only for seasonal use. And so people kind of remove them from that home ownership and market in a sense, or rentals, they just rent for short term and skews the data a little bit, but, so yeah, thanks, Bridget. And so you can see some areas of growth there, which is a good thing. If we can move forward then, I don't want to take too much of your time here. So then there's just another way to see a few of the particular locations where the decline was the lowest. And so when we hover and click on one of the points, you can see, all right, almost 8% decrease in Cherry Valley at least. And almost 10% in Richfield Springs. So you can see some particular areas where, for a host of reasons, we can't explain exactly why those decreases happened. That's a more complex answer, but at least we can spatially get a sense of where the highest amount of reductions, if you will, have occurred. So yeah, so it's pretty well spread throughout the county there. If we scroll down a little bit further, so beyond the
You guys zoomed in a little bit.
okay, thanks. Honestly,
The operator error.
no. So the housing stock, again, more information about it. As I said, our housing stock is getting older. We have a large portion of the housing stock that was built before 1939. That's why I chose this year to profile. So we can see some areas where the housing is older. That doesn't necessarily mean bad or somehow compromised, but it does mean, the new home development is not, at a pace that people might want or may not want, but that we can find areas where that housing is significantly older than other areas. That might mean the conditions of those houses, maybe, right? That's something you want to further examine, but it could lead to the conditions, meaning maybe we need to be involved in restoring some of those homes, and Warha's work and the planning department working with municipalities to seek funding to assist in that effort. So yeah, so that's built before 39. And then just another data set that's interesting, I think, is given the 1978 end of lead-based paint in residential homes. You can see the way the Census Bureau packages the data, it's before 1979. So keep that in mind, but there's a significant number of homes. The other thing I want to mention here is that we're looking at the block group scale in this image, and a lot of the data is at block group scale. So you're getting down to a scale where 5 houses could be significant percentage. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes these things look very dramatic, and sometimes they may be, but many times, it could be literally a handful of homes or people that have significantly changed that percentage.
But countywide, more than half of homes are built before 1980.
Yep. So it definitely speaks to potential need in the future and additional costs with the assistance that's provided, that abatement, et cetera. So then the household type, another thing interesting to look at is, what is the household size, right, or type in this case? But the majority, well, I shouldn't say majority, actually, 44% of the households are occupied by single folks. So you have a lot of 1 to 2 person households in the county. That again can inform what we may think would be most appropriate or most beneficial to the largest amount of population in terms of what we look to develop in the future, what municipalities can be aware of in their individual areas, what may be best suited to their population. And so, yeah, that's really the story out of that.
I just want to add to another piece of it is thinking about, the kind of people that if we want to attract, meaning if we want to get that population pyramid back to a pyramid shape, part of that, I mean, I know you all know the workforce development challenges and then wanting people to come here and start a family and all of that. Well, that also informs, that's not our predominant household type. So how do we, create the kind of housing that's going to be accessible for those people to then find those jobs and find a place to live and then want to start a family here. So I'm just going to add, it's about what we currently have and what we need to provide for who's here, but then also thinking about what population groups would we want to attract.
So basically, this study is a foundation for what mix of subsidized housing government is she looking to build. That's what you're describing.
Not necessarily. I mean,
Yeah, no.
so the work we do is obviously going to have to, the work we do is revolved around grant funding.
Right. So government
Planning.
investment.
So a lot of, and depending on how you look at it, some people will say fortunately, some people say unfortunately, a lot of the funding for housing is for affordable housing or for low to moderate income. But, so while we may not be able to leverage sort of the private scale investment, our message is like, here's what we can do, but also, here's important data for those who are looking for in terms of the private investment, the market rate housing. Here are the gaps and here's what we also need. So I don't think it's, we're talking from our experience because that's the kind of work we do, but by no means do we think that that's the
I'm not
only.
making
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
No, yeah, I was like, I hope you don't think that's
All
the
your
only kind of
phrases
housing.
are what municipalities should look at or whatever else. So I just want to understand, I ask questions to understand.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's how your mind, where your programming is, that's how it gets
Yes.
done in a place where you
Exactly.
can't profitably do it with private investment.
Right, and here's,
Just so we all
And
understand,
maybe this data can inform that private investment.
to run like crazy.
yeah, and here's a great example actually of what you're bringing up. In the village of Sydney, for instance, I don't know all the details on this project, but I know enough to know, when they had to do all the flood buyouts, the village annexed some land from the town and they wanted to put a housing development in there. So they approached developers said, unfortunately, in this kind of market, in this kind of location, it's not gonna be worthwhile for us to invest in all the infrastructure needed to put these houses here. So if you can find public dollars to get the infrastructure piece and get the water, the sewer, electric,
Okay,
broadband,
I'm with you there.
then we might see it worth our time to build the houses and make the profit. So sometimes it's kind of both coming in together where, the private dollars are just not seeing a business case. So
Correct.
what can we leverage from public money to then make it a little bit more attractive for them? So you bring up a really good point with that.
Well, your point on extending sewer and water, a civilized community has sewer, water, high-speed internet, natural gas. If we want to get on that list, that's what we need to do.
Yeah, it's a key.
Can a household
And
be
that's-
around?
Can be done.
Yeah,
Okay.
And do the single households include that college student data?
yeah, it does.
So it would be high.
Yep. So there's, that really has an impact on the data,
Makes it
that college
irrelevant.
population. But, I don't know.
Well,
Completely.
the high median ages that we're seeing are also reflected in those single or no child, as a
Yeah.
lot of those are the 60 and older as
Mhm.
well.
Exactly. So, yeah. All right, so then the vacancy issue here, household vacancy, a little complex because there are many different forms of vacancy. And so the Census Bureau has information about households that are available to rent that are vacant, households that are vacant but are not available to rent. And so all of this different information, households that are vacant and available to rent only for seasonal use. You know, so there's a lot of these different small categories here that they include. And so in this case, we're looking at really the percent of vacancies across the county that are actually listed as available for rent. So they're not being kind of withheld for, seasonal use. And you can see there's significant numbers down in the Oneonta area, that central corridor. We can see some high percentage of the vacancies that are available. And then a little inset of the Oneonta area, just to capture a little more of that detail for you.
But to be listed as available for rent, do they need to be marketed, or does someone think someone could live there? I mean, there's something like 60, 70 vacant properties in the city, as I recall. So most of them can't be rented because they would need a lot of work to be rented. So what are you really counting?
Well,
The census's vacant for rent section is for things that are actively being vacant.
Marketed?
Yeah,
Okay.
somebody wants to put a tenant in it.
I don't understand how they are coming up with that.
it's,
I mean, for,
yeah,
for me,
no,
how would they know if I'm advertising my apartment?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
They have no idea.
Correct.
yeah, except in the
And I-
2020
I
census.
never have vacancy, so I'm never
Yeah.
advertising.
Mhm. Well, and I think in the 2020 decennial census, that's information they ask, so I would imagine somebody that does own property and rents it,
The strange thing is that the 2020 census, they
that's a,
went to my renters,
ah,
but they never asked, I never filled anything out for any of my multi-unit.
okay.
I'm just saying,
Yeah, no, this is all, like Tammy said, a work in progress, so feedback.
Basically, we know already, there's a lot of vacant properties in the city and the county,
Mhm.
that poverty has made them vacant because they're old stock and
Mhm.
haven't been maintained and no money to maintain it, and it becomes vacant because it's not usable.
Right.
And for that large a number, I would almost have to think you're including some of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's, more information to be parsed out here, I think, as we go forward.
To be clear, these percentages here are not the percent of housing stock that is vacant for rent. These are the percent
Vacancies.
of the vacant units that are available to rent.
Yeah. So
Yeah, because
50%.
we hear from the colleges and from Bassett that it's virtually impossible to find a place to rent.
Mhm.
So make the,
Yeah,
have
this
a
doesn't,
percentage that high of vacancies available for rent and then not be able to find one.
Yeah.
There's
Illogical.
an issue with
Well,
that. Yeah.
there's also the costs
Affordability,
involved,
yeah.
the affordability of those rental
Yeah.
units that comes into play.
And because this is a percentage of the vacancies, that could mean if, say
There are
there's
two.
two vacancies in a town, and one is available for rent, it would show here is 50%.
Right.
But that doesn't mean there's an overall availability.
Yeah.
This is kind of
So
reflecting.
another irrelevant number, go next.
yeah, I think this would be,
No, I don't think it's irrelevant.
I think this would be a good one, though, to pull out the raw data.
The raw data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Currently, it's not telling you that here.
But that's a
Well,
good
could be,
point.
I think,
because
could,
be,
it'd almost
yeah.
be better with counts versus
Correct,
percentages.
yes.
In the smaller towns,
Typically-
the units are so small,
Right, yeah.
limited that the percentages. look
Yes.
And that's data we have. A lot of times the census data is visualized as a rate.
Right.
But yeah, when you're talking fine scale, the raw numbers are important, and which we have those. So moving on. So this is a more recent estimate from the US Census Bureau. So same notion, could be talking about two vacancies. So keep that in mind. However, relative to the rest of the county, that's how it fares. So I think when you're comparing block groups or municipalities within this space, it's still relevant to show the rate, but you do have to follow up with the raw number to really get a sense of just how many are we talking about. But for comparison's sake, it's very nice. So then some more housing characteristics then that speak to what you mentioned regarding broadband and internet access. They capture a lot of different data sets regarding this. Computer in the home, internet access, subscriptions to various internet providers, and broadband, something that, of course, we would all love to see more of, but is a significant challenge financially across rural America in general.
Well, I think for $500 and $100 a month, you can hook up to Elon's system and
Yeah.
be functional, so that doesn't seem like we want it to be flexible.
Yeah.
Get this done in a hurry.
Yeah, I think, I know with that particular system, for folks, if they're technologically challenged, it can be a challenge, so just make sure that those people have the support they needed to kind of navigate when there are
Once
issues.
again, there's a certain obligation on functioning member of our society.
Yeah, that's right,
And it was asked from third base, so
yeah.
it's not that difficult. Everybody has an internet, everybody knows how to work it. That's 92%, that means everybody.
And this is,
In this culture currently, that's the norm 20 years ago was your statement would be true. A lot more people are functional.
and keep in mind the numbers here, right? The raw numbers, because roughly 84% of the county has broadband subscription. So already a very good number. But then when we're trying to find the pockets, and then ultimately.
I don't think last mile wireless is realistic at all, period. If somebody decided to live on the backside of a hill, then he can do without it, or you get a satellite. I mean, why would I spend all my tax money for somebody who wants to, a low percentage? If we get to 85%, we got it done, let's go.
Yeah, and I think too, it's about thinking about where it's attractive to live, right? So I know when I was looking for a house, I knew I wanted to live in a place where I had high-speed internet
Yes.
and I had cell phone service. And so that automatically blanked out certain communities to me, concentrated population areas, the whole, I looked at homes in Morris. Morris is a beautiful community, but at the time when I was looking that stuff wasn't available, so I didn't live there. And so thinking about, again, going back to the working population and people wanting to raise families here, those are the kinds of things that people who are starting out might be looking for, that kind of access.
Cell phone, those things in population have gotten much better.
Yes, it has. There's still some really, some really poor pockets, but yes, it has gotten better.
I would say there's more poor pockets than not.
Yeah. We have some more granular level maps, but they're not maps that we can put in this.
My entire commute home, there's not a single place where I get service.
It's at 205.
And where I currently live in Otsego does not have service.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Danielle, you're there? Because I was.
I think there's more pockets that don't have cell coverage.
The COVID migration from downstate, if you trace that, it's traced to housing units that have high-speed internet
Yeah.
and cell service.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if there is no high-speed internet or cell service, those places were not attractive
Right.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
This is just a quick one, but Otsego Electric expanded
Yeah.
high-speed internet. Is this after they did their expansion or before?
This probably would have been during
Okay,
the expansion, but most of it would have been completed.
okay.
I don't mean to, but
No,
just
yeah.
from a tiny perspective.
Sure.
Yep, absolutely.
So then just some other, we'll look at obviously characteristics, homes without a full kitchen, which you can see what that means to the Census Bureau. Faucet, stove, sink, fridge, and then the next area, the homes lacking full plumbing. Again, just to get an assessment of where these conditions exist in the county. And full plumbing, see the four variables there used in that. Small numbers of houses ultimately, but percentage-wise in some of those block groups, it's high. Just a nice little example from Orha, who shared some pictures with us, some of the work they do and really wonderful refurbishing and restoring different homes around the county, and something that we want to continue to obviously partner with ORHA and see their work done. New housing permits, you can see there's a small number, but ultimately that's what accounted for 1% growth of housing stock in the county. So that, again, gives you the raw numbers. So the percentage there is positive because of that. So the market then, we're looking at things like home sale prices, how much they've increased through the COVID era, really. Mortgage rates, various factors that ultimately continue to make it a challenge for young people, especially to afford new housing or any housing in certain areas. So total number of closed sales, that's another interesting statistic that more recently we can see how we fare compared to the state. And see those numbers there. Moving forward, it's the median age or median home value. Sorry, you can see the significant kind of difference there. If you want to scroll down a little bit to see the legend here, what we're talking about in terms of dollars. Again, just to have an assessment of where these areas are located. Affordability as well. This is ultimately defined as people who spend, it's affordable if you spend less than 30% of your monthly costs on housing. And so the map shows where that population, those population groups are that are spending more than 30% of their housing or monthly costs just on housing. So
Owner costs, right?
what's that? Yeah, these are owner costs. Thank you. Homeowner costs. Rentals, that's very spatially across the county. There are some communities where over 50% of the population are spending more than 30%, in some cases more than 50% of their housing costs or monthly costs on housing. Just more information to take in. And then short-term rentals, I don't want to go too long here, but this is an interesting part. There's a lot of research on the influence that research or short-term rentals may have on a local housing market, and it's really debated back and forth. There is certainly no consensus in terms of, yes, it always impacts the housing market, or it impacts at a certain percentage all the time. It's very variable and place specific. But it's something to think about with the amount of short-term rentals we have in the county, how that might be making an impact on removing potential new homes from buyers. So what we see as a county and the county planning department, a few different priorities. We want to continue to support the municipalities in their efforts as they see fit, what they want to address, share information with them, and as they want to pursue housing and along with the other things we're happy to help them with, we want to play a role in being able to provide them the services they need to apply for grants, things like this. Smart growth principles, something that comes up a lot with housing stock and trying to increase development. So that's something we would keep in mind as well. And that really is a holistic kind of vision of housing and community development. Partnerships, much like we have with ORHA and have had for a long time, we really want to make those partnerships stronger, and as a county planning department, continue to provide services to the municipalities with their particular interests, what they want to work on, and with respect to housing in this case.
Do you meet with each of those municipalities and have these conversations?
Yeah, we haven't had this conversation yet. We've talked about housing in kind of general terms, but not, this is the kind of current state of affairs, and then what do you want to do? What do you envision? And that would be the next step. Yeah. And then, of course, the grant funding, which is, how we would look to address any of these concerns or goals that municipalities have. We would want to look to helping them secure funding.
And I should note, a lot of these priorities are rooted in what we've heard through the development of the county strategic plan. So that's in the final draft stages. But a lot of what we've pulled is what we've heard from our local organizations and our municipalities and the public on what they were really wanting the county to be more of a leader on, or just to convene or facilitate where we can. So this is us hearing that feedback and saying, well, we know that housing is a concern. How can we support our local organizations and municipalities through their efforts?
And I think, just to clarify, what Tammy, what you're saying is our strategic plan doesn't say we're gonna increase housing. It's
No.
more lending the expertise and knowledge that Otsego County has.
Yes,
Such as you, through the planning department, to provide this kind of assistance.
Yes.
And that our strategic plan is gonna be a different,
Right.
it's very different than our previous document, which really didn't get, the kind of use or impact we were looking for. This new document is all about leveraging our knowledge and expertise through Otsego County.
yes. And so when we were thinking about all this housing data and what do we do with it, thinking back to strategic plan, I'm like, well, we can leverage our ability to take information, gather that for, organization municipalities. We've got grant writing experience, we've got mapping experience. How can we support their efforts through that? So,
It is interesting. I think housing is the big gap in economic development we talk about all the time. And I think, but without some kind of focused target as a county level to go to the municipalities is great, but if they don't have that same vision in mind as the entire county in terms of where we want to increase, right, single family homes, or where we want to increase rental units based on what you're trying to draw in as an overall strategic plan, it feels like it's lacking something. It feels like it's lacking that cohesiveness to say, yeah, you can go and ask, a town, Morris, what do you need? Oh, no, we're good. Okay. Right, but we're not good because we're not able to attract those, right, whatever that talent might be, or those single family homes that might need to be there to attract a family to come up here. So that it feels like there might still be a gap in what are we trying to achieve in the county? Where do we take this data to say, here's what the needs are, here where the highlights are, and then work with the municipalities to see if you can get there
Yeah.
versus leaving it completely in their hands and say, what do you want to do?
so we are approached by municipalities all the time. And certain ones more than others,
Mhm.
for sure. And they want our help. They don't know where to start.
Right.
So this is our way of saying, if we can provide them some of this information, they can understand their community a little bit better. They provide us the local knowledge, and how do we kind of put those two things together to get the community that they want, because it has to be in line with their comprehensive plan and their zoning laws, that are also going to further, some of the countywide, national, state level priorities. And that's where they're kind of saying, like, well, smart growth principles, you want funding, you really have to align yourself with those principles. So how can we marry those principles to what our communities are asking us for?
Well, at the end of the day, somebody's got to be able to afford to live in with the
Absolutely.
structures that someone has to build,
Yeah,
and the lack of affordability to build.
yeah, it's,
If you look at per capita household income in the beginning,
yeah,
that has to be fixed, or you can do everything you want to do, nobody can afford to live there anyway.
Yeah.
So they just build tents. To me, sewer and water extension, the county's Department of Sewer and Water, I've been saying this for 20 years. So that all small communities get in it and grow it, so we can compete for some more commercial work and jobs, so we can have a per capita income so someone can afford, and sewer and water extension, so we're right near a piece of property, we could build a development, not to pay $10 million to run sewer and water to your
absolutely.
development.
Yeah.
No, these are things that the county or someone needs to get on board with a vision forward. First is extension of essential services, so the developer doesn't have to pay it, but we got things to do.
I think this new plan, I think there's some good context and narrative about the history of county government and the evolution, and then, honestly, I think the kind of the overburdened issues and challenges facing county government, so I think, I don't disagree with you, but, a lot of people, the county is recognizing its capacity and where, the high level role that it has to focus on from a strategic planning, perspective. I think in the past plan, it talked about developing new housing. It talked about growing broadband. The county doesn't employ anyone that has that expertise.
Well,
And every single one of those elements in the plan, if you go back and look at that plan, there was nothing measurable, no kind of outcome based, so the whole planning document is basically, once we can release it, it talks about kind of these functional results, and transitioning to more outcome-based results for Otsego County. I mean, it's a whole different way of looking at our county government and, what we're trying to accomplish, and I think I think to Cheryl's point, people, it's gonna fall short because it doesn't directly say housing, but housing is still in there from a work plans perspective with our committee, with IGA and, but with the county government, we have to recognize the assets we have and what we can do and leverage those, that skills and expertise to move these kinds of initiatives along. We can't say we're gonna lead housing in a strategic plan because we're gonna fail as soon as we write that in the planning document. But I think in a way we can lead it, it's just, we have to state it in a different way.
I think ways just bringing we can help bring the right people together and lead people to the right resources. That we can certainly do.
And I feel like that there's a lot of that. I mean, the analysis, the data collection that's happening within the county, the systems and infrastructure we're putting in place are way beyond, where we were years ago.
This is great. We got to keep moving. I got work to do. Everybody's got work to do.
So, thank you for your time today,
Yeah, I know,
appreciate it. I
thank
think,
you.
for us, it's kind of now, how does that play into our plan and our strategic vision? Is there any adjustments we want to make as we learn from this data and move forward? So thank you so much, guys, for your
Thank
time.
you.
Appreciate it. Have a good day. Okay, so we'll move
Jack,
quickly.
roll over here. Jack,
That's been here. Craig, someone left it.
Jack.
We'll move into the report of the audit and finance committee.
Wait a few minutes.
We approve here, boss? We don't do that. usually,
No,
so-
no. Not those minutes, no.
Okay,
He's just using your minutes as a review.
Yes.
They're in your packet.
okay, but we never approve those in committee. So we
Oh,
approve
well,
them here.
Yes. Thank you, I'm sorry. Yeah, they're, oh, you already did though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
So he's just reviewing it.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, bills and communications, we do have a pretty long list, even since the last time, and then just if you want to know, Megan, then the correction or refund.
Yeah, so we, all the bills at the bottom have been paid since our last board meeting. You will see that Cobble Stone has a $34,000 invoice there. They actually sent that back, but because it was included in their $112,000, which is down lower. So you'll see on the deposits, the $34,000 that came back. And unless anyone has any
Is there
questions.
is there one, we want to print up for, how many do we print up for these?
There were 7, so there should be one for everyone. You'll also know we got most of our admin pilot fees. For 2024, we're only missing one of those. So everyone's paid.
Any other questions on bills?
Oh, I have another bill, sorry, I'm sorry. One came in last night, that's for the cleanup at Roundhouse Road. It's $3,100. So if you want to see it, I have it, details what she did down there.
Is that the final bill?
It's her final bill, yes, yes. So that's for the cleanup of all the encampments and all of the garbage that was along the road, so mattresses, tires, there's a whole lot of stuff.
Which aligns with the communication we received.
Yeah, it's a nice segue right into, so if you want to just approve the bills.
Yeah, so can I get a motion to pay the bills?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I don't know that we need to discuss the letter. I think we all read it. We got it. We've now cleaned it up. There'll probably be something a little bit more that we have to make sure we continue to stay on top of, but at this point,
Yeah, I think the
We should
only
be
thing
meeting.
from the note was, or the letter rather, was that they're not gonna let us know in the future, so. I'll drive down there more often just to make sure the garbage along the road. I don't know how to really enforce the encampments. They found 3 encampments down there. We only know of 1. There were 3. One is deep in the woods on the north side of the road. The one we knew about was on the roundhouse. And then there was one a little between the Trevisan property and the roundhouse. So the largest one, she said, was the one that was on the north side. She said there were a bunch of campfires there.
So at this point that we put up no trespassing signs, and so I would say continue to work directly with law enforcement on.
Good job.
They've already warned them, is that correct?
Yeah, they say, yeah, everyone down there gets a warning. If they're down there again, then it moves to the next step.
Which is a starter one.
The written warning.
Yeah, we'll stay on top of it.
Okay.
As we get.
Report of the projects committee.
Jody, I got no remarks. What progress have we made?
Here's a rich bill.
Or do you want to go right into this?
We have a Richfield.
No,
We can
we'll
hold
go
on. Yeah.
through the updates on Richfield and we do. I'll briefly discuss the budget that we submitted as well as any updates on the archaeological work.
No unfinished business. So we'll move into the Vecino group. I'm going to turn this over to council and Jody to kind of walk us through quite a bit of stuff on this. So I'm not sure if you just want to go right down the bullets. Jody, you start with your section and then we'll turn it over to council to walk through the resolution
Yeah, we did.
one at a time.
About 3 years ago, we adopted a policy for scoring matrices for deviations from our normal pilot. We reviewed that. We had 12 activities and weighted score from 5 to qualify under that project. I also received from them a spreadsheet that shows all the construction numbers, their operating expenses, cash flow projections, the development budget, tax credit worksheets. I actually didn't include that because they want to have that remain confidential at this point in time. Similar to what Springbrook had done, they supplied us with their cash flow projections as well. They're requesting a pilot payment of $46,500 in the first year, on increasing that by 2% for the next 30 years. This analysis shows that when you alter their numbers, they
I have a
drop.
question. What did you call it? What project? This is the Astor, right? Stereo.
Casino group.
What'd you
The
call it?
housing project.
I know,
This is
I
your
know.
Casino
It says at the top, a stereo.
Yeah.
Oh, down in here. Okay, I just want to, I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't say anything like that in here, I don't think, does it?
I think that's what they're calling
The
the
project.
Yeah,
That's
so
the
the
project.
casino is the.
So the casino is
I
the
understand.
developer.
When you alter their numbers, they have a debt coverage ratio that they're trying to keep at constant at 1.25, which is basically the amount of expenses, the amount of income is 25% higher than their expenses. That's a standard bank requirement. And their Sunny May income expense, income to expense at 1.05 or higher. So when we alter their numbers, which we did for their pilot agreement, instead of paying 46,500, we looked at what they were to look at 132,000, which would be 100% of the taxes that are due. Their ratios dropped down to 0.95 and the debt coverage ratio down to 0.67, which no back. The last page on this, sheet 5, we looked at, could we drop the requirements to do a 30-year payment and go to 25 years? And when we looked at doing that again, their debt coverage ratio dropped down to 0.67 for those last 5 years. So it does appear that the request is legal.
Really, it's the only way that they would be able to move forward with the project. Yeah, big.
We also ran a cost benefit analysis using the MRB group's calculations or their spreadsheets. And when we plug the numbers into that, it showed a local cost benefit ratio of 12:1 and state level of roughly 1:1, combined 9.1. So that's a requirement that we certified by the state controller's office that we have to go on the analysis, and it shows that in fact there is a benefit higher than the cost.
12-1.
And the numbers that they gave us are all accurate. We checked all that, we just assumed that.
At our public hearing, we did receive a letter from the Cooperstown Central School District opposing the project, and that's in your package. We also received, their, presentation, and their testimony is in here, they support the project. And they must have to go ahead with it. And with that, I will turn it over to Chris to go through the resolutions.
Thanks, Jody. So the first resolution, folks, is our seeker resolution. As you know, before the IDA can provide financial assistance for a project, they need to make a determination under the seeker, which is the state environmental laws. In this case, the village of Cooperstown acted as the lead agency for the seeker process. They, on April 29th, they made a determination that the project would not have a significant effect on the environment and issued a negative declaration to that effect. So this is, best case scenario here. The IDA is just piggybacking off that determination, and this resolution piggybacks off that and approves the fact that you have no information to suggest that the village's determination was incorrect with respect to seeker. So that's the resolution before you today. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions anyone has on the seeker resolution? If not, I would take a motion.
I will make that motion.
We'll do a roll call vote.
Cheryl Robinson,
Yes.
Dave Bradley,
Yes.
Jeff Lord,
Yes.
Tom Romeo,
Yes.
Craig Delsman,
Yes.
Patricia Kennedy,
Abstain.
Andrew Marietta.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. You didn't get a second.
Did you second?
Great.
Yeah, awkward and seconded by Tom. Okay, thank you, Tom. Okay,
Okay, so we'll move on to the deviation approval resolution. If folks are ready. So this project, because it's a 30-year pilot, is a deviation from your UTEP. The deviation letter is required to be sent out to the tax jurisdictions under the general municipal law. That was sent out August 26th. To date, I think the only thing we've gotten back is the letter that Jody mentioned from the Cooperstown Central School District on the 12th of September. We waited the 30 days required under your UTEP to wait for other comments to come in. But the resolution before you would approve the deviation from the UTEP with respect to this project.
Questions on this? I guess, Jody, I was providing more insight from the school district's perspective versus the village perspective. Why is there such a conflict there? With the 12-1 benefit, and currently I believe the property does not offer any meaningful tax or school benefits.
No, it doesn't. But let me go through some of the points that the
I had exactly the same question.
that the school district raised. Questioning why we were looking at doing such a long pilot agreement, and basically that's because the banks are doing a 30-year mortgage, and in order to do that, they have to have a certain debt coverage ratio and income to expense ratio, and that's why we were looking at doing the pilots.
So I just want to say from our perspective, both from the deviation weight for this as a project and also from the 30-year, it makes sense just because that's the only way the math works out.
That's correct.
Does the school district have that information?
No.
Okay.
They filed their complaint a week before we did the analysis. And technically at the public hearings, you're just supposed to listen to what their issues are, and you don't have to respond at the
Yeah.
public hearing.
So they're,
I just want to make sure we understand
Yeah,
them, right? And
they don't have the information.
The second thing was that they said that the state, that the application states the jobs will not be moved outside of the state of New York, and they're complaining about that therefore, why are you giving this if they're not moving out of state? What they misunderstood in that question was they're not doing the project anywhere else. They're only doing it in Cooperstown. So if they don't do it in Cooperstown, those jobs won't be in New York State,
They'll be nowhere.
but they won't, yeah.
it won't exist.
So that was the second issue.
They don't exist.
And the company has failed to establish the community and economic benefit to justify, again, the abatement to extend a 30-year in length. Again, it had nothing to do with the economic benefits of the community, although Mayor Joel Pons addresses that in her letter about the impact to the community and the revitalization of the commercial area in the downtown.
But even the 12-1 would indicate there's an economic benefit.
Yes, and again, that has to do primarily with the construction jobs that are being
Okay.
done and the sales that are being done locally.
Okay.
And again, we didn't run that pilot, that cost benefit analysis until after we received these letters.
Okay.
Was there any communication post that from the district? Did they come to the hearing and?
No, we did not come to the
Yeah, their attorney was here. as well.
The gentleman that was here
Yeah,
was from
yes.
the Cooperstown.
Yeah, okay, that's a.
He probably had it. Or he just wanted to listen to this.
You wanted to hear this.
And clearly what the school district is looking for is they're looking for more tax revenues. And that's the reason, as you're saying, they're giving up to roughly $2 million in.
How much more are they getting than they're currently getting?
That's a good
And what do they have invested to get the increase?
The proposed pilot of 46.5 is roughly.
It's a rhetorical question. You don't need to answer.
Okay.
You're getting something for nothing.
The other issue that the mayor raised was that the school district decided that they're creating 50 units. A number of those units are bringing children, and they have a very low enrollment in that.
The school is approaching it from a scarcity perspective, yes.
I think the school in general has taken, opposition to pilots over the previous years. So I think,
We've received letters from the rep house.
yeah, there's financial, I think the bottom line for them is the financial.
Well, let me say, letters a good, legitimate question. That's, we move forward.
Well, as long as we're within a mediation policy and legal counsel is
Yeah.
okay with it? Yes.
Correct.
Point.
Any other questions or discussions? If not, I would take a motion to approve the resolution for the pilot mediation. Second.
Okay.
Take a roll call vote.
Cheryl Robinson,
Yes.
Dave Rowley.
Yes.
Jeff Lord, Tom Romeo,
Yes.
Craig Galvesman,
Yes.
Patricia Kennedy,
abstain.
Andrew Marietta.
Yes.
Passes.
All right, and we have two more commercial binding resolutions.
Yep, let's keep going. So third resolution is the commercial finding resolution. I know Joe's talked to you folks in the past about this. The municipal law statute for the IDAs doesn't specifically reference housing as a project for which can receive financial assistance. We have gotten very comfortable over the years. There's a number of comptroller opinions and other things. We've gotten very comfortable with the fact that housing fits under the umbrella of a commercial project. To support that, we always have our IDA clients adopt a commercial findings resolution specifically making that determination. To buttress that claim, we have a letter in support from the mayor, which is attached as Exhibit A to the resolution, which makes various statements, the most crucial of which that it will support the commercial revitalization of the village, increase consumer spending. It'll provide a solid base of customers for other businesses in the village and surrounding communities. So, again, we've done a number of housing projects for IDAs across the state. We are very comfortable that it's valid for the general municipal law. This is just kind of being Boy Scout and adopting a resolution supporting that for your file. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No, if not, I would take a motion to approve the resolution of commercial finding. Thank you. Roll call vote.
Cheryl Robinson,
Yes.
Dave Rowley.
Yes.
Jeff Lord,
Yes.
Tom Romeo,
Yes.
Craig Galvesman,
Yes.
Patricia Kennedy,
Abstain.
Andrew Marietta.
Yes.
Okay, that passes.
All right, and then the final approving resolution.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the last one is just a resolution authorizing the IDA to enter into the necessary documents to finalize this transaction, the straight lease document, pilot agreement, the uniform agency project agreement, and the sales tax recapture agreement are the other ones. The public benefits for this project are detailed in Exhibit A to your resolution. Happy to go through if you would like me to, but the highlights are 3 full-time equivalent new jobs within 2 years, $23.8 million investment in the project, $800,000 in sales tax exemption, $142,500 for mortgage tax exemption, and a little over $2 million in real property tax exemption. So those are the highlights, Chair.
Any questions? I think we've got the numbers pretty well laid out in our supporting materials. If there's no questions, I would take a motion to approve the resolution.
So
Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Cheryl Robinson,
Yes.
Dave Rowley.
Yes.
Jeff Lord,
Yes.
Tom Romeo,
yes,
Craig Ellsmith,
Yeah.
Patricia Kennedy,
Abstain.
Andrew Marietta.
Yes.
Okay, it passes.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the insight and walking us through those resolutions.
My pleasure.
All right,
Thanks, Chris. Joe?
we'll move into approving the Field Springs update.
Really quickly, Litchfield Springs is in construction. They're almost completed with the water line. They're waiting for the memorandum of agreement to be signed. Before they can look at that.
is that between the village and the town, or?
And the IDA. And I'll let Joe speak about the memorandum of agreement.
Yeah, sorry, Jody, I could barely hear you. So could you repeat that introduction?
Yes, what I was explaining was that the Anjo construction is almost completed with the water line before they can hook it up to the city system. The village system, the village is going to require the memorandum of agreement to be signed. And I was wondering if you could update quickly that it looks good.
Yes, and I can say that it looks good. There's been 2 or 3 drafts of the IMAs for the water project and the sewer project. There are 2 separate documents. There's been some back and forth and like I said, 2 or 3 drafts over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Most recently, yesterday morning, Jody and I met earlier this week, went over my review, went over Jody's review. We sent our comments back yesterday morning. The town attorney signed off on those. The town council signed off on those comments. There was a little bit more tweaking of the language by the village attorney late morning while Chris and I are in Buffalo attending meetings today. While we were in the car driving, he was driving, I was sitting in the passenger seat. I took a call from the village attorney, resolved some questions I had with her additional language. I added 1 clause to each of her suggested updates. She signed off on those. So I think both documents are in final form and ready to be signed.
Those documents are really important, and the timing couldn't be better because I have to have those documents signed and sent to EDA before they will process any payments. That's the only missing document. So once we get that, we can start seeking reimbursements from EDA, which should start in October, November. So that's really positive for our capital.
Anything else on Field Springs?
So how much work is left there to do?
We've got a schedule from them that they're planning on going through, I think, March or April.
Okay.
So that they're going to do their paving in the spring of next year. So that gives us some time to work with the Public Service Commission.
But they'll be doing with what they're doing now shortly, they're almost done.
They're almost done with the water line, and they're starting work this week on the sewer line. And they plan on going all winter. So I'm surprised about that.
Yeah.
Did we ever revisit this idea of any publicity with that? I mean, since the project is actually underway and happening.
I think what we'll do is we'll actually, once we get these documents signed, we'll actually have a ceremony at the site in October.
And Cynthia will be there?
Yes. Any other questions on Richfield Springs? Really quickly, I know we're running late. Really quickly, we did submit a budget request to the county. We did request an increase from 200,000 to 300,000. And they will take that into consideration, so hopefully we can negotiate with them to get additional monies from them for this year, this coming year. And lastly, a couple weeks, 2 weeks ago, I did meet with maybe we should briefly hold a quick executive session.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and go. So if we're going to Birchville Springs, public comment, is there a public comment from anyone? Hearing none, next is the executive session. Coming out of executive session, no action was taken. There's no other business here for the COIDA. Can I get a motion to adjourn? All right, we will move into the CRC. We'll call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Cheryl Robinson,
Here.
Dave Rowley,
Yes.
Jeff Lord,
Here.
Tom Romeo,
Here.
Craig Gelbman,
Here.
Patricia Kennedy,
Here.
Andrew Marietta.
All right, for the chair's remarks, need approval for the meeting minutes of August 22nd. Any questions, comments, or changes?
I like that motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We do have a bill, that was not in your packet for CRC.
The bills are in the package, kind of on the
Oh.
agenda, but we did receive the 3 bond fees for 2024 from Springbrook, Bassett, and Hardwick. So now the bill, they came in as deposits where the IDA has billed the CRC, and so the CRC will now be paying back for the admin fees on those bonds, so the 42,904.
Any questions on that? Now I take a motion to pay.
So.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Executive session needed. Hearing none, motion to adjourn. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you.